Rasa Ride Sharing Company ARASA.ca என்ற இணையதளத்துக்கு சென்று தி ஏராசா டிரைவர்ஸ் ஆப்பினை டவுன்லோட் செய்து டிரைவர்ஸாக வேலை வாய்ப்பை பெறுங்கள். மாதாந்தம் $4000 வரை சம்பாதியுங்கள். வணிக நிறுவனங்கள் ஏராசா இணையதளத்தின் மூலம் மளிகைப் பொருட்கள் மற்றும் உணவுப் பொருட்களை விற்பதோடு வாடிக்கையாளர்களுக்கு டெலிவரி செய்யலாம். தமிழில் தகவல்களை அறியாளையுங்கள். GTA பற்றி 40 ஆண்டுகள் அறிந்து கொண்டவரும் வீடு விற்பனை துறையூடாக மக்களால் அறியப்பட்டவருமான சிவா பிள்ளை 416-854-0005 Taxi broker licensed by City of Toronto. Rasa Ride Sharing Company ARASA.ca என்ற இணையதளத்துக்கு சென்று தி ஏராசா டிரைவர்ஸ் ஆப்பினை டவுன்லோட் செய்து டிரைவர்ஸாக வேலை வாய்ப்பை பெறுங்கள். மாதாந்தம் $4000 வரை சம்பாதியுங்கள். வணிக நிறுவனங்கள் ஏராசா இணையதளத்தின் மூலம் மளிகைப் பொருட்கள் மற்றும் உணவுப் பொருட்களை விற்பதோடு வாடிக்கையாளர்களுக்கு டெலிவரி செய்யலாம். தமிழில் தகவல்களை அறியாளையுங்கள். GTA பற்றி 40 ஆண்டுகள் அறிந்து கொண்டவரும் வீடு விற்பனை துறையூடாக மக்களால் அறியப்பட்டவருமான சிவா பிள்ளை 416-854-0005 Taxi broker licensed by City of Toronto.
Recording in progress.
Good morning, everyone.
Hello all, those who are coming on board.
Just give a few minutes for everyone to join in.
Yep.
We'll just mute everyone coming in right now.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. We have around 25 people on board right now. Just want to let everyone know that there's a lot of updates happening so far, especially in the real estate industry, with the news that came out from the federal government recently. All of those, we're going to be, Salva will be holding a session on that this Wednesday. So just a reminder for everyone to attend our coffee meetings this Wednesday, because we're going to be having an in-depth conversation regarding that. It'll be very useful for everyone in the real estate industry, because there are some major changes that may or may not affect us to a certain point.
Yeah.
Just a reminder for everyone to be on mute.
Yeah, actually, a lot of actually the federal budget was, prior to that, there is a lot of speculation, and that's what it's actually impacted with that kind of slowing down, right? I mean, when this federal budget is, it's actually not much of changes apart from, it's not going to have again only for the first time buyers. I was reading the budget. I think, I mean, in particular for the real estate, for the first time buyers is that credit, like $10,000 credit, and like foreign investors and all that. So not much of impact. Yeah.
The limitations on foreign investors, that's a large one. Also, when it comes to the taxation of certain particulars of when you're reinvesting into properties and flipping properties, that's another one. But yeah. I think the main drive into anything that will cause a change in the real estate market would definitely be interest rates.
Right.
A reminder for everyone, April 13th. April 13th is going to be next week, Wednesday. The Bank of Canada is going to be increasing the Bank of Canada rates by 0.5%. So all variable rates will be now 3% as of next week. All fixed rates from the banks will be 4% and higher, probably 4.5% as of next Wednesday. Remember, interest rates are rising. B-side interest rates will be between 5 to 6% very soon. Right now, it's sitting at 4%. A-side rates, especially on the variable side, you're probably looking at 3% as of next week, and around 4.5% as of next week for five-year fixed. So just a reminder, that is coming. It is definite based on the information that we have so far. Yeah. And further discussions will be on that this Wednesday during our coffee meeting.
Yeah, I think that all those things are actually what it's contributing, and slightly that we all are feeling that it's kind of slowing down, right? I mean, people are waiting for that. Definitely, those who are actually, it's a human psyche, right? I mean, it's when the prices are going down, investors should buy it, but it's unfortunately that's what we all do. It we think that, okay, let's wait for more, like, I mean, maybe the prices will go down further. So yeah,
correct.
Yeah. And in one thing which is I was actually reading in the federal budget is one interesting thing is that home buyers, the bill of right, I mean, where there is actually the inspection, which is the seller will have to accept that. So it's, in a way, it is good. Like, I mean, we are putting all of us blindly, taking off all the mortgage and, like, I mean, waiving off the inspection and all that. I think, I mean, that might change slightly, right? Which is good for the buyers.
Yeah. And also reminder, this is all very, very fresh. Aurea, Rico will be giving us updates on all of these aspects very soon. Aurea already sent out an email yesterday and the day before stating that, they're going to be on top of these measures that's recently come out. And also they'll be advocating for or on behalf of real estate agents in the province of Ontario for what measures should be, less restricted per se. So Again, it's going to be there's going to be a lot of information on this coming out in the time being. With that in mind, Gopa, I'm going to leave it up to you.
And you can share the screen. Yep. Okay. I should be able to share the screen now, right?
Yeah. Just give me 1 second.
Okay.
Go ahead, though.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for joining this Saturdays. This is this is our second class third session. So I appreciate all of this. The name are quite consistently that the same people are coming. So I'm happy to see that this is actually adding some value to your profession. So thank you once again. So just we discussed a whole lot of topics in the past few classes. So and I just a reminder, like again, you can use the chat box if there is something which you wanted to discuss about it or in a particular topic. As I always encourage you, those who are experienced in this business, asking those questions or contributing the sessions will immensely help the rest of the folks. So just that any topics we have discussed, if we wanted to touch base on that, we can collectively discuss here. So feel free to use the chat box or unmute yourself and ask those questions. So I'll continue to check the chat box. If there is anything, I will pick up the topic. But folks, it will be interesting if we get some participation. So and again, it's not just for yourself, it's also you're supporting the rest of the folks on the call. So today's topic is actually, it's little like, I wanted to actually bring your attention here. I'm going to talk about the difference between the client and the customer, right? Then in the later part of the presentation, I'm talking about the customer service. Keep in mind, when I say the customer service, it's not about in the real estate customer service I'm talking about. That service, you will be doing it for the client and the customer. So it's a little confusing. So one more time. You all are actually licensed folks. You will be knowing what is client and a customer. We will touch on those just as a refresher, right? And then we'll talk about the customer service, which you will be doing it for all your client and the customer, right? So it's just that, and if it's not clear, again, ping me, and then I can actually walk you through that. So let's talk the first part of that, the two types of agreements, right? You all know that we have client and the customer, right? There are two types of agreement when you're dealing with the buyer and the, the seller. There are two types of thing, which is client and the customer. So both of them, like when a buyer and the seller, they will enter into the customer service agreement or the client service agreement. So everybody is clear. There are two types of agreements, because this, again, those who are licensed will know that. You must be knowing that. This is just a refresher, right? A representation agreement. The first is one is the representation agreement or the customer service agreement. Keep in mind, both are legally binding agreement, because when you sign anything in that white paper with the real estate related transactions, it's a legal document, right? So both are legally binding agreement. The representation agreement, when you enter into a representation agreement, that party will become client, right? The customer service agreement is as a customer. So so keep in mind, you have to really differentiate, because this is also, once you establish and once you're actually a busy real estate agent, it's important to really understand this, because sometimes you tend to over service certain things. It is good to do it, but also you have to remember your return on investment, right? How much time you're going to spend on that, and what is it actually legally your obligations. You need to really understand all these two things. So that's why you need to know the agreement, the type of agreements you are entering with them, which is representation agreement is called then that they become client. And when you sign on the customer service agreements, that person and that party is actually called as a customer, right? So so there is actually, if you're a client, the brokerage has an important obligations. Like, I mean, when you're entering and you're signing up a client, making a client agreement, then you are, that is the biggest important obligation is the fiduciary duties, right? I mean, basically, what is the fiduciary duties? Again, you all will be knowing that it's actually, licensed folks here. Must promote and protect clients' best of interest, like whoever it is, whether it is a buyer or a seller, you have to work on their best of interest, right? I mean, that's the fiduciary duties are there. And the second one is disclose all material facts about the property. Material facts, again, like, I mean, latent and the patents, defects and all that, you need to know that you have to go an extra step in finding out. For example, if somebody asks for that, what is the you showing a property there, and there is an open land nearby. If the buyer is asking what is going to come there, so if you're a client, if that person is a client, you have the agreement in a client contract, you have to take that extra step to find out what's going to come there, because you don't want later on, like if something, maybe a factory is coming or something like a noisy, some area or mall is something coming, and the buyer can actually get upset. So there is a legal obligation to that, to go an extra step to find out about the properties, that disclose all materials about the properties, right? So client contract, there are two things. One is your fiduciary duties to the client, and the second thing is disclose all material facts about the properties, right? I mean, you have to take an extra step to find out those two things when that party is, when your buyer or a seller is actually on a client contract. If it is on a customer representation agreement, like, if it is a customer, you have to actually, again, fairness, honesty, and integrity. That is, regardless whether they are a client or a customer, you have to actually, like, honestly, you have to be truthful. Your integrity and fairness, you have to maintain that relationship with the customer, right? And also, like, I mean, you have an obligation to disclose the facts about the property, but again, it's not required to take the extra step. Guys, keep in mind, you have to know, what's the relationship with your client and how much time you're actually going to spend there. Again, if you are really not having any if you're this is something which is an established real estate agent should be doing it, like, maybe in the beginning it is okay to do an over servicing the customer, because you have to actually get your foot in the business, right? So for that, it's okay. But keep in mind, when you're actually spending a lot of time where there is no income is going to generate, then you have to shift the focus to somewhere else. So that's why it is important to know, what's your duties when it is a client contract between the customer representation contract. Customer representations, you have to deal with them with fairness, honesty, and integrity. So, like, I mean, that's what goes without saying. You have to, like, treat everybody with a, as a respectfully and with fairness and honesty and integrity. So you have to maintain that. And then you also need to disclose the material facts about the properties. But again, as the previous example, as I mentioned, somebody, you are showing a house and that person is asking what's going to be there. You can, you can politely tell them, if I'm not sure about it, if we are seriously going to put an offer, and if you're buying the with this, I can certainly get the more detail about that. You don't need to spend the extra time and extra money to find out those material facts about that. But whereas if it is a client, you have an obligation to find out that and disclose all those material facts about the properties. And again, refresh your memory in, I'm sure that when you did your real estate licensing in that subject, like in the real estate course, there is a whole lot of explanation about the customer and the client relationship, which is very important in this business, because you need to know that this is also directly related to your income and the way you are servicing your client. How is it directly related to your income? Because sometimes you are over servicing for a non-revenue generated client, and you're actually losing a lot of time where there is somebody who's really want your service, you're not able to actually service them. So that's why it is important to understand the client relationship and the customer's representations relationship in this business, right? Over servicing is good, but you need to know that who you are doing it, and is it really going to help you to build the business. So that's why it is actually, you need to understand that one, right? So anything on the chat box so far? No, any question, folks, so far? Okay. So that is, I just wanted to actually open up with that, with the difference between the client and the customer, right? You will be knowing that, where is the client, regardless of whether it is a client and the customer. You as a real estate agent, the way you service them is called the customer service, right? So again, don't get confused here. Client and the customer, right? That is, there are certain responsibility for this, your brokerage, as you as a licensed persons, they're there. If it is a client, don't forget about the fiduciary duties and disclose all material facts about the properties, right? I mean, if it is a customer's representation agreements you are entering into it, you still have to treat them with fairness, honesty, and integrity, and respectfully, and you treat the customer, and then disclose those the material facts about the properties, but you don't need to go an extra step. So that's one part of it. Now the customer service is like, think about that, whether it is a client or a customer, how do you service the customer? So that's your personal brand, right? I mean, when they're majority of the times a client, a repeated customer, or you get the referral, or somebody actually going to do business with you, is because how you actually service them. That is the customer service here, right? So it is very important, you need to know that customer service, and without actually mixing up with the client and the customer service contract in the business, this is, you're separating the customer service, like, I mean, you're actually, how you're actually treating your client or customer, right? So there is a difference between the customer service and the customer experience, right? For example, customer services, you think about it like you are actually doing something what is required, right? I mean, the perfect example is like you call up Rogers, like, I mean, your internet is not working, so you call up Rogers, and then that you were on a hold for whatever 10 minutes time. Some technician came and like actually walked you through the process, and then you got connected. Okay, fine, you're happy. So that is customer service, which means you had called that service provider for something to get fixed and you're happy about it. Whereas there is a difference in the customer experience. The customer experience is every touch point a customer will do it with you, which means when your internet is not working, you picked up the phone, right? Is their telephone line actually getting connected so quickly? If the phone was answered fast, the person who picked up the phone treated you well, right? I mean, was thus able to resolve your issue. Once they resolved the issue, what was the follow-up? Did they actually call you back and check that everything is okay, and then you are happy? So that is called the customer experience, which means every touch point when your client or a customer is actually interacting with you, how you are actually treating them. So that's called the customer experience. So you need to actually change your focus from customer service to focusing on customer experience. For example, customer experience, your services you we offer, right? I mean, everything like your website, when somebody actually walk into your website, is it actually laid out properly? Is it easy to actually find out, filter the thing? Like, I mean, when they talk about your personal brand, every touch point, how quickly you're answering your emails, right? How quickly you're actually, how proactively getting back to your clients, and how you represent yourself. It's also like, I mean, are you up to date? Are you actually, like, I mean, when you're, responsible, and you're thinking about all the, your as a licensed person, maintaining the professionalism, right? I mean, answering their calls and all that. Are you able to provide a solution for their questions, right? So that's what the customer experience is. So everything, like when you're actually interacting with your client or a customer, every touch point is that's what eventually going to make a difference in from others, right? Otherwise, everybody, like, I mean, that's the reason people actually say that, well, I can go to iCloud or iPro or whatever. I mean, iCloud and, those kind of, the no frills brokerage, they can go there because they can get the transaction done through them, right? But that's not what you wanted to do it. You wanted to change the mindset, is basically you're not actually looking at that one transaction done. What is their experience from point A to point Z? Like every touch point, how you're actually handling the situations and managing the business, is their experience. What is their experience? Is, are you delighting the customer, right? I mean, that's what it's actually is important to understand, and how you are actually doing it. And for that, as I mentioned, you need to actually think about everything, like you're answering your calls and telephone response to your emails, your websites, and, like, I mean, how professional you are representing that, how you're actually, are you able to provide a solutions, how knowledgeable you are about that, and that's the experience when they're actually dealing with that. So this is the critical thing. And when you really look at the people who are actually really established in the business, they're not actually the servicing the customer, is not what they're actually improving their customer experience. So that's where you're able to build your business base, because every touch point, you are showing a difference than what others can do it for them, right? I mean, so it is very important that is you focus on the customer experience side. Can you have a customer service agreement with the seller? So somebody asked that, can you have a customer service agreement with the seller? And I mean, I want to say yes, but let me, Kana, you're there? Or somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah. So someone asked, like, I mean, can you have a customer service agreement with the sellers? My understanding is yes, right? I mean, you can actually, just to sell that one properties, you can have it, correct?
Yeah, there's different forms associated for that, right? Now, in this case, majority of the time, the listing agreement is what is mainly used when dealing with sellers, right? But there are other ORIA forms, and we can get involved in that a little. But I don't have the exact forms right in front of me right now. But we can have a discussion on that after. But yes, there are specific forms for specific purposes.
Yeah. I mean, and just to elaborate on that, yes, Kanna will. Thank you, Kanna. You can actually focus on what you're doing. So, just yes, there is customer service agreement. Again, that will be like, for sale by owner. There are a lot of actually, it totally depending upon the situation, whether you're actually, like, you're only going to show them, you have a ready buyer, where the seller is actually a for sale by owner, and then you're actually saying that, certain commission. So as Kanna mentioned, a straight answer to your question is yes, you can have a customer service agreement with a seller for only thing, but you need to know that what kind of forms and what kind of situation, and then what's the agreement, what you're going to do it only for, selling that property to certain places, or your buyer, and all those kind of things. So yes, you can have that buyer service agreement with that. Anyone else wants to add anything, or any question? I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. Okay. Okay, so because the reason why I was talking about the customer service and the customer experience is because there is a direct relation between the income and the level of service, right? You are going to get referrals, you're going to get business, or people who are actually going to come to you or come back to you. The repeated customer is basically, it's all based on how you service them in the past. So that's why there is a direct relation between the income and the level of services you're going to actually do with that, because it's obvious when their experience is good, when they're getting the solution, the right solutions from what they're actually looking for, and they're happy, like, every time when they're actually interact with you, like your brand value, their loyalty towards you is actually improving, and that's where you're going to get the references, that's where you're going to get the repeated customers. That's the reasons there is definitely a direct relation between the income and the level of services you provide, right? So you need to understand that to increase the income, improve your service. So that's all you need to do it. Like, I mean, it's apart from, like, I mean, how you're actually managing that, your services means, again, that's the reason I'm open with that 2 slides in the beginning. You don't want to actually spend your time where it is not really valuable to you, right? I mean, that's why you need to understand the client and the customer service relationship first, and then, like, based on that, your improve your that customer experience. So referrals are only through come to the great services, right? I mean, you're generally, like, I mean, if somebody who's unhappy, and even if you really look at that, someone who's actually doing a for sale by owners is generally, what are the 2 reasons? Like, one is they had a bad experience with all the real estate agents, right? Or second thing is they don't want to give commission, right? I mean, they wanted to, they want to save every penny what they're going to get out of that. So that's the only 2 reason when somebody is actually doing it on their own. And even for that matter, even when someone actually home buyers also they feel that they can do it on their own, because they haven't seen that value what our real estate agents can bring on the table. They think that every information is on the all this website, and I can find out. But again, we mentioned about last week, how can you actually bring that person to a buyer representations agreement, right? I mean, if we discussed in length last time, so make sure that is you remember all those points. How do you actually convince them? How do you actually show them the value as a real estate agents can bring on the table, right? So all this going to come is directly related to their customer experience when they're actually dealing with you, how you actually referring those things and improving that customer service agreement, right? Great customer service is the, one thing is that, regular communication doesn't mean you pick up the phone and, like, I mean, all that. It is in using the variety of channels, like such as email, your websites, and your messages, and all those things, like, how quickly you're updating your buyer and the seller, right? Which is very important, because you don't want it like they are actually chasing you for information. You have to proactively, said that it is also a methodology to manage your own time, because you are actually proactively going to call up and inform them and updating them what they're going to do it. Forwarded to a voicemail service that has not been initialized by the. So it's important that is you actually understand like the regular communications when you're working with them and all that, right? I mean, you set those property like so it's when you're actually doing something very important, you're not getting call from your buyer or a seller, because you have already actually communicated, you are already updated. So in that way, you're also actually able to manage your own time well, right? Create a chain, select your partners cautiously. It's like, lawyers, title companies, movers, inspections, etc. I'm sure that your brokerage have all the governors, right? I mean, the chain, your full chain connections, like, it's already, you must have, your brokerage is a very well established brokerage. So you guys will be having that, all those things, which is because ultimately this is the biggest problem in the customer service industry, where if something happens, let's say by your movers messed up something, and you are the one actually referred that movers, it is unfortunately it's a reflection about your service too, right? Think about it. You book an airline ticket and you're traveling somewhere, and travel agents book the ticket. You got the ticket, and once you arrived your destination, your baggage is missing. Where do you call? You call the travel agent first, right? But when you're in theory, like when you really look at that, they have got nothing to do with that. Like, I mean, it's the airline, and even the airline is also like, there are ramp employees, which is basically people who put the luggage on the belt. So they are part-time workers or some other contract company. So there are so many things, but all that, we don't care about all those. We don't know that. We'll pick up the phone and talk to the travel agents, and like, I mean, or maybe we shout at them because it's your interaction was that person whom you dealt with the ticket. Same way that happens with every service industry. If you really think about everything, like, I mean, look at Tim Horton. Like, Tim Horton is actually a company. Each location has got a different style of servicing. So, but as a company has got their own actually certain way of doing it. But again, it's also depending upon that particular location, how they're managing the business. So it's a reflection for that company. So it is very important that is when you are actually selecting your partners, you do that very cautiously. I'm sure, I mean, your brokerages already have done it, but just as a reminder, like, make sure that is, you are the connecting link between your client and these folks behind you. Ideally, I always say that when you're actually recommending, you need to have your 3 options for everything, right? I mean, you have 3 lawyers, 3, well, not the title company, generally with the lawyer will deal with that, like, 3 movers or inspection, because you don't want to actually tell one person, and it's also actually giving a right impression to the client, because client should not actually think that, what is your vested interest in actually pushing for only one person, right? So you should be actually, as in a very professionally, you say that I have these 3 lawyers, or these 3 moving companies. You select, you call up, you decide, right? And again, your brokerage rule may be different, but this is, you make sure that is you actually aware of all this, instead of, like, just going with one option, because that is sometimes it's very difficult to manage that. So it is create that the partners very cautiously. That is also a reflection about how you service them, and like, I mean, it's your name as well. And how do you delight the customer? Like, I mean, it is always under promise and over deliver. Like, I mean, that's where you delight the customer, right? I mean, delighting the customer is, if it is on the other way around, you're really upsetting them, right? I mean, if you're telling them, you're going to do that, do this, and then you're not able to do that, then obviously you're upsetting, and that's going to get into a very ugly conversations at the end of these transactions. So that will seriously damage your brand name, and also, like, I mean, your relationship with that client and the customer. So it's always make sure that is you always under promise. So the safest thing is, you under promise, and you always, your best way to say that, let me see if I can waive off this fee for, like, I mean, what is it, status certificate, like something like that. Something, I'm just giving an example about something small. Or you can say that, okay, let me see whether I can actually fix this for you. Maybe I will, let me talk to the buyer, and then, we can actually adjust that. So you don't want to promise anything unless if you are really sure about it and you're going to do that, because always try to under promise. And then, but your focus should be, you need to get that done. In that way, you're going to delight the customer, right? It's all it's your opportunity to shine. So why not? Like, I mean, don't you miss any opportunity to shine yourself. So if you just see that, you know that you have to get this done, but when you're actually telling before it is getting it done, is actually kind of an under promising. Although you are going to make sure that is you will work on this, you have to get it done. And then once you actually fix that problems, and you go back and tell them, Mr. Buyer, Mr. Sellers, here it is. So think about that. If it is other way around, when you're actually, like, I mean, really committed, but you're not able to actually do that, then that will be an ugly conversation, right? So always make sure that is delighting the customer is the best way to delight the customer is under promise and over deliver, right? Again, this is we spoke about the fiduciary duties and also the customer service representations, right? I mean, trust, dependability, qualities of the customers always looking for, regardless whether they are a customer or a client. You need to actually make sure their dependability and the quality and the building the trust. It's very always practice these three qualities, which is very important. Like, I mean, fiduciary duties, whether they're getting into a contract or not, it is important that this is part of your personal brand, right? And that's why this is going to actually help you to create the business base for the future, because how this is where you're going to get the referrals, this is where you're going to actually get the repeated customers. They're actually coming back and creating that business base with that. Once you have a bad experience, it is not likely they're going to come back to you. So think about it. When if you ask somebody ask you, can you tell me a place where you have experienced a good customer service, you will have at least take few minutes to think of it, right? But whereas if the question is on the other way around, can you tell me a place where you had a bad experience, you don't have to think, you will come in, like, I mean, you will just blurt out about 10-50 of them. Because what I'm trying to tell you, like, people tend to remember where they have received a bad service, but it's very likely people will remember when they receive a good service, right? So bad service, it is seriously going to damage your brand name, because that will every will get to know, like, I mean, that's the way it is. People are actually, you also think about it when you go to a restaurant, if the place is nice, yeah, you are not going to go and publish that. But if it is a bad service, you tend to talk about it, right? If it is a good service, unless somebody actually asks that, you will, then only you will going to talk about it. So it is very important that is you make sure the bad service is actually travels too fast, good service does not, right? I mean, it takes time, but at least the best thing is, like, at least that your reference and all that going to come with the good service. So bad service will, it will stay forever. And again, think about your strategies, like, a block time to talk to your customer on a regular basis, because again, as I mentioned, that this is one way of actually controlling your time, because that's otherwise when you're doing something serious, like, you're not getting interacted, you're not getting actually calls are coming, and then you're missing any important notifications or communications back to your customer and a client. So you need to block your time to talk to your clients. And this is an also an important thing, like, how do you actually improve? You don't know, like, I mean, what you're doing right or wrong, right? I mean, the best thing is when you talk to your client or a customer, ask them for feedback, right? I mean, you just like, openly ask them, like, what the Mr. Buyer, like, I showed you about 5 houses, how do you like it? How are we actually aligned with the selections? Like, I mean, is it something which is, this is what your expectation out of me, right? I mean, openly ask for feedback, and don't have that feeling like, I've been doing this for long times, I don't, I mean, I don't need you to tell me kind of attitude, right? Because at that point, you're not the boss, your client is always the boss. Like, I mean, they are the one actually going to pay the bill, they are the one actually going to actually put an offer or sell the property to that, right? So you don't want to actually have that ego trip there. Like, I mean, you just wanted to actually slow down and then ask for that feedback, even if it is actually a constructive feedback, be open to change that, right? I mean, it is important that is you are also actually listening to them and open for feedback on that. Educate the customer the process with the listing and the buying, like, when you're actually meeting with them, when you're actually going to enter into a representations or the client servicing agreement, educate the process. Like, I mean, how you going to do it, like, set up the expectation right from the beginning. So, Mr. Buyer, like, what's the best time to actually take you out of a showing? Is it weekends work for you? Is Monday, Tuesday? So set those ones. Of course, sometimes you have to be flexible, both parties, because sometimes certain properties will come in the market, you wanted to immediately show it to them. That's besides the point. But you set that expectation in the beginning. it shows that professionalism. It shows that, you know, how serious you are doing the business, right? I mean, so explain the process, like you're showing, and then you are actually walking through them the contract, explaining to them, you know, what is the how the process works, like the closing. If somebody who's actually for the, especially with the first time home buyers, they will have lots of question about all the contract, because when somebody actually sign into those papers, they need to understand their legal obligation, and you know what happens if you show the property and if they go and buy somewhere else, right? I mean, in the holdover period and all those things, you guys should know well, and walk them through those process very in the first place itself, right? I mean, when you're actually start showing the, once you decided and once they have actually confirmed they are going to actually work with you, once you sign the contract, then your next job is to process the, you explain the process, right? And then again you walk them through that. Once you are, so the way it works is you have to make sure, like, I mean, of course this should be done in the beginning, like you have to let them know, once you like the property, the way things works like this, you know, you have to put an offer. When you put an offer, you need to have that, you know, that the deposit amount, like, I mean, the initial deposit amounts, you should have it. Is it ready accessible in your bank? Sometime what happened, like they'll say that, okay, how much money you have it in the beginning, they say that, okay, I got 50,000. So your question is that 50,000 is in your savings account? Is it easy accessible, right? So these are the pitfalls you don't want to fall into it, because these can be really an ugly situation later on. So when they must be thinking that, yes, I have 50,000, but it's in RRSP or somewhere in a fixed deposit or GIC. So that doesn't, it's not going to help you, because once you like a property, you all know that you have to put that the deposit amount and then say very same day, right? Or maybe within 24 hours. So your question should be like, that's where you explain the process clearly. No surprises, guys. Like, I mean, there should not be any surprises in the transactions later on. So the buyer should know that if I like it, if I'm going to put an offer, I should have that 50,000 or 30,000, whatever the amount I should have ready. I should be able to make the draft, walk into the branch and then make a draft and give it to this seller. Like, and then you explain to the process. And once you get it, generally we get 30 days or 60 days of closing period. And that's the time we'll have to do the mortgage. And then, you know, mortgage works like this. So you need to explain those process very in the first step itself. Like, I mean, it's that these are the things that every touch point, as I mentioned, this is not the customer service, this is called the customer experience, right? You're actually explaining every touch point. And also, like, I mean, when you're actually doing, you can do the survey once to close the process completely. Is once you actually do that survey, means, you know, don't make it too complicated. You can just ask them 3, 4, 5 questions, right? You can just ask them, you know, how did you like it? Where do I need to improve? My selections, the houses which I did, it was it actually meeting with your needs? Like, you know, is there anything I need to actually do that? It's a great way to improve yourself, guys. And this, especially when somebody who's actually new to the business, you must actually consider, because the person, no one else can actually give you feedback so openly than somebody who actually dealt with you recently, right? Because that client or a customer can, and it's also actually you're building the relationship with them. It is a good thing you're openly asking, because the trust is actually, that person is also actually feeling valued. They're thinking that, okay, this person is taking time to get my feedback, so, you know, they're actually helping you in a way. So feel free to ask those feedback, right? And calling active listing, like, you know, when you have any active listing going on, make sure you explain the process. Tell them, you know, Mr. Seller, I'll inform you after every alternate days, or, you know, whatever the time period you're going to actually set up, whatever works for you and your seller, or weekly, how you going to update them? Like, I mean, the showing happening, like, you know, you call back your the showing agents, and what feedback you're actually going back to your seller, right? I mean, it is very important you updating them, because whether what kind of feedback, when you're these showing agents are actually giving it to you, and it is important to pass back to the seller. So that whether it is, I mean, something which about the pricing, or they're actually talking about the property, or whatever that, right? I mean, so you need to have that active calling system with every active listing. And again, provide a checklist to the clients along with your listing presentations. Like the listing presentations, when you're doing the listing, the checklist is your listing presentation package should have a complete uh, number of things what they have to do it, right? Once they close this, what are they need to do it once they close the properties. Like, see, when once they're actually too busy with the closing and all that, they will tend to forget few important things. So you are actually helping them in maneuvering those difficult situations, such as put the list of the address change, right? I mean, even small things. These are the things which I'm talking about, delighting the customer experience, right? You put the list of things what they have to do it. You say that, call the movers, and as I said that, make sure you give 3 options to the movers. Again, you call the lawyer, always ask them, do you have a lawyer, do you have a mover, do you want me to give you that, right? I mean, that's what, instead of you telling them, or always, or are they actually, sometimes they say that, no, I have a mortgage person, I have a lawyer, then absolutely you can back up and then let them deal with that. But you need to know, because it's also actually going to affect your transactions, but you have to request them to keep you in the loop, although if they're going to manage them directly, right? Again, if the movers, you let them know, like, I mean, and once you are actually movers, this Mr. Seller, like, these are the things you need to do it. Your address change, put a list of things, like if they have kids, remind them, school change, their address change, and like, I mean, credit card, bank, and all those. So put a list of things in your listing presentation, so that will really going to delight the customer. That's where they're actually going to feel the value about working with the professional, right? So otherwise, this is anybody can do it, whereas you're proactively reminding them and helping them to remember all those things. So it is very professional. It will come across very professional when you put that in a paper and tell them these are the things you need to do it, right? And property tax and all those things, like, I mean, you make sure that is you call up and change those one, the utility services. Some of them are, lawyer is going to take care of it, but the things which is lawyer is not going to take care of it, you have to, like Rogers and all those kind of utilities and all that, you have to actually list those things and remind them what they have to do. That listing presentation should have this checklist. Each one should have a listing presentations, and you should have all this information that's already pre-printed. Because think about it, like, you don't need to do this on every listing presentation. You only have to do it once and put that in that paper, because it's going to be pretty much the information is going to be the same for all your client, right? All your client and a customer. So the feedback, I mean, asking for this, the survey is actually a very effective tool. You can do this with the buyers generally, like, I mean, when, and especially when you're actually showing homes, you show one day, like, I mean, when you're actually showing, it's a maybe 3 to 5 houses you select, you show them, and after every 5th house, or sit with them, ask them, what did you like in this, in house A, house B, house, whatever the address or some things, what they actually really liked it, what they did not like it, right? Because otherwise what happening, like, you are actually going to show them 50 houses and they're not able to actually make any decision. So it is a waste of your time and their time, and they lose the credibility in you. Like, I mean, that's where like, you are not able to actually make any income out of those kind of transactions. So whereas if you actually, in the first few days, when you actually started showing them, and get that feedback in the first place itself, like, what did you like in this house? So they say that, okay, I like this. So you can gauge their taste, right? I mean, that is it within the budget, first of all. Second thing is the area you're selecting is the right one, what they're looking for. And the third thing is the the locality, what you're actually, the neighborhood, what you're actually doing is the right. Third, then comes to your layout, right? I mean, what are they actually looking for? Are they looking for this kind of layout and this kind of place? Like, I mean, is that what they're liking? So you need to really, when you're actually showing them, you have to observe their reaction, right? Like, I mean, when you're actually, that's why when you're actually showing them, initially when you walk into a house, try to zip up your mouth. Don't make any comments in the beginning, right? Let them see. And unless if they actually ask for an opinion, that's the time you wanted to. You don't want to open that, wow, this is nice, right? Or you don't want to say that, this is not the place. Like, just maybe something which you don't like, the chances are they might like it, right? I mean, you don't know. Like, I mean, so the first that 10 minutes of, when you're actually showing the houses, when you're walking in the house, you don't want to make any comment. You reserve your comments till the end, right? And once you actually complete the showing, when you ask for an opinion, listen their feedback first. Then you say that, okay, fine, I understand. Now let me tell my opinion about it. And that's where the real professionalism you show them, because if there is some things which they are not able to make a decision, you are helping them to understand the plus and minus of those things, right? For example, I didn't like the paint color. Fine, no big deal. You make sure that is, you're not saying anything in the beginning, but if that's the only showstopper, you can say that how much is going to cost you for a painting, like $3,000, $5,000, you can paint it, right? That's where you show the professionalisms and help them in making that decisions and all that, right? So it's very important that is you actually ask that feedback at the end of showing, for instead of doing it for every house, keep it like 3-4 houses. Create a set of questionnaire, what you liked in this house, what we should have actually done differently, is this something which is within your likings, like something like very simple 3-4 questions. You can actually think of it and interview the client and then get that back, right? And so again, so this is we think about the marketing, right? This is creating your brand. That's what it's actually doing, it the emotional connection. So when you actually do these things, that's where you build that the emotional connections with your client and a customer, whereas because they're actually looking for your opinion, your support in making that decisions, that emotional connection, that trust you're building it. And it is very important. You don't want to be a secret agent. Secret agent is basically, you're not advertising, you're not doing anything. So that's not going to actually help you. You have to utilize all those channel to promote yourself, such as the social media, Facebook, and all those things. Make sure that is your name is up there. Utilize all those channels. And also the online advertisements and your own website, right? And whatever you post in the website, on the social medias, it's important that everything posted to the internet is there forever. That means you have to maintain professionalism, certain standard when you're using your websites and anything you're posting in the on the online channel. Because what is actually online channel, that is also going to create your personal brand. That's where people were actually, when you're putting in the Facebook and all that, people are actually going to watch you, how you're there, what professionalism you're maintaining, and it's directly going to affect your business base as well. So make sure that is what you're putting it in there is very you're carefully evaluated, and you're doing that, right? And again, these are very, very small things, dress up for success, right? That means, doesn't mean that is you always wear a nice suit and shirt. That's not what I meant. You maintain the professionalism, right? Whatever you're you have to make sure that is when somebody is actually dealing with you, they should have that feeling. When that first appearance is also very important. So it is actually make sure that. And something which is this is something a lot of people actually are very hesitant to tell themselves that is, I'm a real estate agent. You don't need to be you don't need to be shy. You have to actually openly call that out. You're a real estate agent, and wear your pin in your communities. It's a way of actually letting others know that is you are a realtor. You are actually and you are very proud about it. If you are not proud about it, if you are actually hiding that, then how do you expect what somebody is actually come and actually going to do business with you? So it's very important. Don't be a secret agent. Openly actually share that, right? Anything on the chat box, guys? Any questions so far? And so basically, what's the real estate cycle? You need to have a business plan in place. We spoke about in the first class business plan, right? It's very important that is you have a business plan in place. If you don't have it, we discussed about it. We actually gave you some handouts. We discussed about the importance of business plans and how can you what is a business plan. like we mentioned about that. So make sure that you have that in place. Then your marketing plan is like, again, you think about it, how do you going to actually promote your website, your all other social medias and other channels and all that. You have a marketing plan, your advertising plan, right? Then the prospecting plan is the backbone of your business, right? That is where all this, the listing proposal and the buying proposals are going to come. So you're really looking for your, who's going to do business with you is the prospecting plan, right? When you do prospecting, that's where the objection handling and the trust building comes. Like, I mean, because when you're prospecting, that's where, why am I paying commission to you? I can go and do it. So those are the objections you will be handling when you're prospecting, right? I mean, and or saying that, like, I'm not going to actually list this house for this much, but I'm expecting this much. So those kind of objection handling and the trust building happens when you do the prospecting plan, right? Then the sales process is where basically you're actually taking the customer to start showing the house or putting the house on a listing. Like, the sales process actually happening, that, like, I mean, your negotiation and your customer experience, customer service starts in the sales process. And the last is the follow-up, of course, because that's where you're going to build your business. Because when you actually do all this very thoroughly, like, that's where your repeated customers are going to come. You're going to actually get more referrals, and the follow-up is as the last step. So think about this slide. This is what actually real estate business is, right? And everything actually what you do here is what it's actually the holistic picture about the real estate business. So every step is very important. Again, today's topics, we actually wanted to mention about the customer experience, right? The every touch point, what you're actually doing with the client should be how do you actually deal with them. So that's where the customer experience comes from, right? And the last step is the follow-up. Any question on the chat box? I didn't see anything, or anybody wants to comment anything. Was it helpful? Nothing on the chat box. Folks, anybody wants to unmute yourself and ask any question or any comment about today's topic? Nothing. Okay. Any? Kanna, you're there? I know Kanna mentioned that he will be in and out. He is actually busy with something. Somebody actually typed something in the. Thank you. Thank you. Somebody said that excellent sessions. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Absolutely. It's always helpful to listen to your research. Thank you very much. And thank you for that. Yeah. Now, and I appreciate your comments and thanks a lot. And this is also important to me because when I'm actually, and I don't hear how you guys are feeling, I need to know that, how is it actually perceived, right? I mean, it's important that is, yeah. So very happy to see that it is helpful. Like, so make sure that is I also see hearing something in the class is good, which is important, but how quickly you're going to incorporate these things that's up to you, right? If you're not going to actually implement these things, then it's as good as not knowing that, right? So once you know the importance of this, if it is helpful, folks take time to implement this. So we will regroup next week. It's 10:30 and I also have another meeting. So I'm going to actually wrap up. But in the meanwhile, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the next session. You can again utilize the chat box or unmute yourself and ask that. Until then, have a great week ahead. Good luck, folks. Okay, thank you all.
ராசா ரைட் ஷேரிங் கம்பெனி ARASA.ca என்ற இணையதளத்துக்கு சென்று ராசா டிரைவர்ஸ் ஆப்பினை டவுன்லோட் செய்து டிரைவர்ஸாக வேலை வாய்ப்பை பெறுங்கள். மாதாந்தம் $4000 வரை சம்பாதியுங்கள். வணிக நிறுவனங்கள் ராசா இணையதளத்தின் மூலம் மளிகைப் பொருட்கள் மற்றும் உணவுப் பொருட்களை விற்பதோடு வாடிக்கையாளர்களுக்கு டெலிவரி செய்யலாம். தமிழில் தகவல்களை அறியாளையுங்கள். GTA பற்றி 40 ஆண்டுகள் அறிந்து கொண்டவரும் வீடு விற்பனை துறை ஊடாக மக்களால் அறியப்பட்டவருமான சிவா பிள்ளை. 416-854-0005. Taxi broker licensed by City of Toronto. ராசா ரைட் ஷேரிங் கம்பெனி ARASA.ca என்ற இணையதளத்துக்கு சென்று ராசா டிரைவர்ஸ் ஆப்பினை டவுன்லோட் செய்து டிரைவர்ஸாக வேலை வாய்ப்பை பெறுங்கள். மாதாந்தம் $4000 வரை சம்பாதியுங்கள். வணிக நிறுவனங்கள் ராசா இணையதளத்தின் மூலம் மளிகைப் பொருட்கள் மற்றும் உணவுப் பொருட்களை விற்பதோடு வாடிக்கையாளர்களுக்கு டெலிவரி செய்யலாம். தமிழில் தகவல்களை அறியாளையுங்கள். GTA பற்றி 40 ஆண்டுகள் அறிந்து கொண்டவரும் வீடு விற்பனை துறை ஊடாக மக்களால் அறியப்பட்டவருமான சிவா பிள்ளை. 416-854-0005. Taxi broker licensed by City of Toronto.